morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I want to show you a really weird Pokemon deck, which has a whole bunch of Pokemon in that I am willing to bet you are not used to seeing in Pokemon decks. I know, right? Let's just get straight into it. Now, Inteleon is the one which is not particularly unusual, right? We love Inteleon. Inteleon's got the amazing ability whereby when you evolve up into it, you get to search your deck for 2 trainer cards and put them into your hand. And then, of course, we also have Drizzile here, who has the same ability, except it is 1 trainer. But it's also a stage 1 rather than a stage 2. Now, in theory, it's got an attack, but I'll show you the deck list in a minute. There's no energy in it, so I mean, it's probably not worth worrying about the attack very much. But we need to attack with something. Someone needs to be attacking here. How about Alolan Marowak? Yeah, it's been out for a little while, and I've done a lot of deck profiles. And I have looked at a whole bunch of decks, and I've never seen this one before. And this was a deck that went and won a tournament over in Japan. Let's be clear about this. And it's obviously got a free attack. I've already told you we ain't playing no energy here. Spirit Smash. Discard the top card of your opponent's deck. If the card you discarded is a Pokemon, this attack does damage equal to that Pokemon's HP to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if, for instance, you're against a Mewtwo and Mew, and you are able to discard a Mewtwo and Mew from the top of your opponent's deck, you get to do 270. And the goal essentially here is very simple. Your opponent is playing attackers. They're probably not playing one-of attackers. So if you can discard from the top of their deck the same Pokemon that is in front of you, you will then get a KO on that Pokemon. Cool. But this is all starting to look a little bit, unlikely, awkward, luck-based, and there's an argument that it is. But the good news for you, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have ways around it. We have things that we can do. So, for instance, we've got ourselves a Lanturn. This is a Lanturn that came out very, very recently in Cosmic Eclipse, and it's got the ability Blinking Lights. As often as you like during your turn, you may look at the top card of your opponent's deck. So the randomness here is completely removed. There is no more randomness. You will know how much damage you're doing. Guaranteed. Absolutely, inarguably guaranteed, you will always know, unless you choose not to look, which seems a little bit dumb, you will always know how much damage it is that you are actually doing. Cool. Here's the thing, though. What does that do? Like, I use Lanturn, I look at the top card of my opponent's deck, and I go, oh, I'm not doing enough to get a KO. Then what? Well, the answer is, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a whole bunch of options, one of which is Aipom. Now, the Aipom Lanturn combo is one that I've talked about on a few videos before, but it's not one we've really seen very often. It's not one that's been terribly successful. Also came out in Cosmic Eclipse. And the Aipom from Cosmic Eclipse has the ability Scampering Tail. Once during your turn before you attack, you may put the top card of your opponent's deck on the bottom of their deck without looking at it. But remember that you've got the Lanturn, which does let you look. So no, you're not allowed to look when you're using Aipom's ability, but you absolutely are allowed to look as often as you like, whenever you like, using Lanturn's ability. And that's the point here, ladies and gentlemen. You use Lanturn to make sure you always know what's on top of your opponent's deck, and if it's not the thing that you're looking for, you put it on the bottom of their deck using Aipom. And there's nothing to stop you playing multiple Aipom. Now remember, one Lanturn will let you look at the top card of your opponent's deck whenever you like. You only ever need one Lanturn on the field. Each Aipom lets you essentially rejig the top card of your opponent's deck once. So what you do here is use Aipom's ability if Lanturn doesn't show you what you want, and then use Lanturn again, and then use another Aipom, and so on and so forth. Sounds fun, right? And that's basically the Pokemon line. It's Alolan Marowak with Inteleon for consistency, and then the Lanturn Aipom combination. Now we're playing a bunch of Stage 1, so obviously we're playing a Ditto Prism Star to evolve into those Stage 1s. That's fairly important. But we're also playing a full 4 copies of Trumbeak here. Now again, we know we're not attacking with it, it's the ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand, you may reveal it. If you do, look at the top card of your opponent's deck and put this Pokemon into the Lost Zone. If that card is a supporter card, you may put it into the Lost Zone. If your opponent has no cards in their deck, you cannot use this ability. But you always know what the top card of your opponent's deck is, so that makes Trumbeak amazing. We've seen Trumbeak played before in some Lost March decks, just to get extra Pokemon in the Lost Zone so you can do extra damage with Pokemon like Jumpluff. But now we're actually playing it here because we know what's going to be on top of our opponent's deck, so as soon as we find them with a supporter card they're going to want to use, in comes Trumbeak. And if your opponent doesn't have a supporter, you can basically keep trying to get rid of their supporters. Now the downside here is that what you're essentially going to be doing is discarding the top card of their deck, which is upsetting, because that means you won't necessarily know if they're going to draw into a supporter next turn, because you'll know what the top card is, but then you'll essentially discard it when attacking with Alolan Marowak. Slightly upsetting, but you can still use Trumbeak to get rid of some of their supporters. Now, we've talked about the Aipom Lanturn combination, but there are a couple of other cards we can use here to try and make sure that our opponent has the right Pokemon on top of their deck. And one of them is Reset Stamp. Now, don't get me wrong, Reset Stamp has no inherent certainty in it. You make your opponent shuffle a hand into their deck and draw a number of cards equal to their remaining prizes. But essentially what it does is it rearranges their top deck. Simple as that. Puts a new Pokemon or new card on top of their deck. So you use Lanturn. They've not got the right Pokemon, I'll use Aipom. They've not got the right Pokemon on top of their deck, I'll use Aipom. They still don't have the right Pokemon on top of their deck, I'll play Reset Stamp. Yeah, maybe it won't work, but it gives you one more option. Probably the better option here, of course, is Chip Chip Ice Axe. Look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Choose one of them to leave on top. Your opponent shuffles the other 2 into their deck. But what's amazing about Chip Chip Ice Axe is you play all 4, but you only actually play it if you use Lanturn and they don't have the right card on top of their deck. You're not randomly playing Chip Chip Ice Axe hoping. You're playing Chip Chip Ice Axe when you know that you need to rearrange the top card of your opponent's deck. Saves you having to go ahead and waste it. They're pretty gosh darned important cards. After that, it's not terribly exciting. It's pretty much what we would expect. Our stadium of choice is Power Plant, but you're trying to stop stuff like Dedenne here, because the slower your opponent sets up, the greater chance you've got of winning with a deck like this. Remember, if your opponent gets all of their Mewtwo and Mew out of their deck, you are not going to find one to try and discard and KO them. That would be a bad thing. The one slightly weird thing here we've got is that we're playing Hop. Now, Hop is just how? You draw 3 cards. Why are we playing that here? It's because we want straight draw rather than shuffle draw. We want to be keeping cards like Chip Chip Ice Axe in our hand for that turn where we don't see the right thing on top of their deck when we use Lanturn. We sometimes want to be playing Cynthia. We play Cynthia, but we don't always want to be playing shuffle draw here. Sometimes we want pure draw so that that we can keep Chip Ice Axe and things of that nature in our hand ready for the perfect turn. Now, this is probably as good a time as any to remind you that although Japan and us are in the same format at the moment, there are a couple of cards that we currently have that Japan doesn't because they had a slightly weird rotation. They only lost a couple relevant cards, but one of them was Lily, so it might be fair to assume that if Japan still had Lily, these Hop would in fact be Lily. No guarantee here, but I think it's probably fair to assume that that might be the case. I love this deck. It is a super weird, super inventive deck. It is not the kind of thing you usually see. It is not the kind of thing we are used to seeing, but it's so good. And the combos that it's got going on are so much fun. Is it good enough? I don't know. It might just be kind of a one-hit wonder. It might be incredibly luck-based and it's only going to win very occasionally. But tell me you found a cooler, more inventive deck recently. I might not believe you. I think this is wonderful. But I would be very excited to know what you think about it. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but that doesn't mean we don't still love them. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.